Thank you, Emily, for that nice introduction, and good morning to all of you. As Emily said, my name is Ian Davis. I'm the founder of Package Pump Systems. We design, manufacture, install, commission and service pump stations. We're probably the largest manufacturer of basement pumps in the UK. I say probably, because when I said definitely, someone took me to have a quiet word with the Advertising Standards Authority. So we're probably the largest pump manufacturer in the UK with regard to basement pumps and accessories, battery backups, high-level alarms, that type of thing. So today we're going to cover a couple of topics. Why do you need battery backups? How long should a battery backup last? The development of battery backups. And what is an intelligent power supply or an intelligent battery backup? Much of this presentation is based on 19 years of trading, based on being involved with over 10,000 pump station designs for 10,000 properties, if you like. And that's been supported by over 150,000 visits to sites to install, commission and service pumps. So let me start off. Let's clarify what a battery backup is. It's a device for powering pumps when mains power fails. So if you lose mains power, you can still power your basement pumps. So while power is available, the battery is continually charged till it gets to a point where it's 100% charged. If the power is depleted, If the power is depleted, the batteries then cut in. So typically they're charged to 12 or 24 volts. It then reconverts it back up to 240 volts so we can run our mains powered pumps. It's really important that when we go into backup mode, we're backing up the pumps that were designed for the job, not something lesser. So let's talk about the standards. As you're probably all aware, BS 8102 was updated this year in 2022, and what that says with regard to battery backup is that battery backup pump systems should be included to protect in the event of power failure. So I'll just repeat that one more time. Battery backup pump systems should be included to protect in the event of power failure. Now, although British standards are not mandatory, if a basement floods and we have not included or offered a battery backup as part of our design, we may find ourselves in hot water, or more aptly, groundwater. So, what does this mean for new basements? It's in the industry's best interest to include battery backup to deal with uncontrollable water when the mains power has failed. Also in BS 8102, it talks about regular maintenance of pumps. So service providers should consider offering battery backups as a retrofit to existing installed sites to mitigate risks. In this instance, generally battery backups are very simple to install. If you've got power for your pumps, you don't need any additional circuitry. So effectively, the battery backup can be installed in parallel with your pump system, or effectively just cut into the electrical system. So we talked about uncontrollable water, and apologies if I'm teaching any of you to suck eggs, but I'll just cover... Sorry, I apologise for that. I'm not really... We're going to talk about uncontrollable water ingress, and it basically comes in two flavours. Groundwater being number one. This is rainwater that falls on permeable surfaces and then ingresses through the structure. This is typically where we'd install a Type C cavity membrane system to deal and manage with the water. Now, the majority of you ladies and gentlemen in the room probably know far more about waterproof design than myself, but I think you'll appreciate it is quite difficult to calculate the water ingress through the structure. So we need to take that into account when we're designing our battery backup system. Second type of water, surface water. So this is rainwater that falls on hard surfaces. So for example, into light wells where there's no gravity drainage, we collect the water and then we pump it up to the mains drainage. Now fortunately, this is very simple to calculate. So generally the rule of thumb is if you're putting surface water into a groundwater chamber, the area you're picking up should be no more than 12 square metres. And in accordance to BS 1056, where we can take the data, we can simply calculate how much water would fall in that area. And even in a 500-year storm return, that amount of water is relatively small. So for a 5-minute flash flood, like we saw recently, you'd expect about 230 litres of water to be stored, which equates typically to less than 1 litre per second. So let's start to talk about why we might need battery backups. Now, let's start to talk why we might need battery backups. Now, effectively, power failure falls into two buckets. So as you can see on the slide, we're split into two areas. The main grid itself. This is the incoming supply to the property that comes in through our consumer board or fuse board. This is the responsibility of your electrical provider. And then secondly, the property electrics itself. So this is from the fuse board throughout your property, and that's the responsibility of the homeowner or property owner. I think in the industry there's a complete misunderstanding why battery backups are installed. Most people would say to me, these are for mains power failure, so if we have a grid failure. But if we look at the data, on average, we have a 30-second power outage per property per year in the UK. So you can almost say that grid failure is negligible. If any of you have come home of an evening and the clock's flashing on your cooker, you probably had a power cut, but the likelihood is that would have been for a very short period of time. So, where does the issue lie, and what do we need to do with it? So we've effectively got three areas where potentially we've got points of failure within the property. The main distribution board or the consumer board. Quite often RCD circuits are installed, but they can actually cause us more problems than they save. Obviously tripping of local spurs or isolators. And equally, one of the pumps could trip the circuit, and if we've got both pumps installed on the same circuit, effectively we might lose two pumps. Quite often we'll see white goods installed on a pump circuit, so for example a fridge freezer. So if the fridge freezer trips, not only are you going to lose your frozen chicken nuggets or your tofu, you're also going to lose your pumps as well. Now of course, good electrical design will minimise these risks. However, in the worst case scenario, and we do have a power failure, what should we do? Probably the most commonly asked question to me and our team is, how long will our battery backup last? And it's very much like, how long is a piece of string? Could someone just get me a glass of water, Kevin? Thanks. There's my one there, grey one. It's the alcohol coming out. So unfortunately, there's nothing in the standards apart from what it says in the PCA best practice guidance document, that we should anticipate a basement pump should run no more than 3 times a day. So what are some of the things we might want to consider in terms of backup time? Now, for me, the minimum time is the time expected for a call out. If it's an electrical fault, the pump engineer will need to have electrical experience. If not, an electrician may be called, particularly if there's something unrelated to the electrics. A reasonable expectation of time. The battery backup could last for 24 hours. Now again, there's nothing in the standards, but if we look at BS 12056 for foul water pump stations, they ask for 24 hours backup, so maybe that's something we could look at. But obviously, the ideal scenario is the length of time that someone goes on a standard holiday, maybe 1 to 3 weeks. One of the things that we'd say is if we are able to monitor the battery backup and the pumps remotely, that can that can shorten the lead time for getting someone out. So, for example, if the client's on holiday abroad and the pumps are being monitored remotely, it gives the client the option to call their service provider and get the issue sorted out quickly. So let's just look at the development of backups. On the left-hand side of the slide, you'll see a generated supply. Generators are generally powered by fossil fuels, petrol or diesel, for example. These can be expensive. Often they need to be located outside because they produce exhaust gases. They will need to be auto-start. So if the client's not in the property, the generator will start automatically. However, they can give very long backup times. Secondly, uninterrupted power supplies, or UPSs, as they're known in the industry. They're mainly designed for computer backup, where the key driver is to back up data very quickly and enable you to switch your PC off. These are not generally designed for pumps. Run and standby times are generally less than 6 hours, and for me, they're not a sensible option. And I would say if you're looking to tick a box, it probably doesn't do that either. This brings us on to intelligent power supplies or intelligent backup. What's intelligent about these units is the fact that they will not automatically power up when the mains power fails. Now, this may sound odd, but you only really want your battery backup to operate when your pumps start to run. So there's a built-in intelligence in these that says, okay, the power's gone off. Do I need to run the pumps? No, I can go to sleep. I suppose if you compare, I suppose if you look at intelligent battery backups, it's a little bit like your modern car with your stop-start technology. You come to the traffic lights, you put the brake on, the engine stops, unless you've got an electric car, and when you're ready to go, you take your foot off and it goes, so without using any diesel or petrol. So we're working along a similar basis. So let's consider the last option, our intelligent power supply or intelligent battery backup. So it needs to have the ability to cover both high and low intensity pump stations with bespoke response times. The key thing is that it understands pump running frequency. So it's able to give the pump power when it needs it, but also understands when it can switch off and go to sleep if the power is not required by the pumps. It should also be able to power the primary pump as well as the secondary pump. So if you imagine you've got a battery backup on a dual pump system, one of the pumps is connected to battery backup and the second one isn't. If your pump on the battery backup fails, then effectively you've lost everything when you have a power failure. So it's important that it can run both pumps. It's also worth considering that if you're installing a battery backup, that it also can act like a junction box. So if the battery backup was to fail, you've still got the ability to feed power from your spurs into the pump. So we're going to talk about backup times, and essentially there's two elements to backup time. The first is the energy that will be depleted from the battery backup when the pump runs, so we call this obviously running time. The second is when the pumps are not running, so the battery backup can go to sleep or hibernate. We call this standby time. So let's consider this. Now, this is some data we've taken remotely from over 700 sites that we've monitored over the last 2 or 3 years. And this is the data that we've pulled out. 2% of groundwater pumps run more than 20 cycles per day. So that's almost the pump running once an hour, which I think you'll appreciate is quite a lot. And that will discharge approximately 15,000 litres of groundwater in one day. Now, for these high-intensity sites where the pump's continually running, standby time is not overly relevant because the battery backup will not rest often. We fall into the second category, and these are basements that I hope all you guys and ladies have designed. 88% of them where pumps run less than 20 cycles a day. And within this band, the majority will run less than 3 cycles per day in accordance with the PCA best guidance practice. This means that standby time is imperative to achieving optimal battery backup because there will be long periods of rest. And this is essentially what gives us our long run times. So, and we can provide this later if you require, but what we think of as our or your battery backup checklist, and it's something that you certainly should engage or involve your supplier with, so you're making sure you're getting the right unit for your client. So, does the unit go to sleep when the pumps aren't operating during a power failure? As I said before, this will massively increase your backup time. When you don't need power to your pumps, the unit goes to sleep, it doesn't consume any electricity, and then it's ready to go again. Can the unit stand by for over 24 hours? This is what we were talking about, maybe a sort of semi-ideal scenario in accordance with BS 12056, where we back up foul pumps for 24 hours. We consider this should be the absolute minimum for backing up pumps while alternative power is sought or you locate a tradesman to fix the issue. Can the unit back up over 5 days? Again, pretty critical. If you start to get into the realms of 1, 2 and 3 weeks battery backup, you're going to have a very happy client if he knows he can go away on holiday and not have to worry about power failure. And as I said, it's not always grid failure. More often than not, it's circuitry within the property itself. Can the battery be easily replaced? Again, in BS 8102, it talks about maintenance, so regular maintenance. Batteries do have a shelf life, a bit like your car battery, typically 3 to 5 years. So as part of the maintenance regime, you should build in the ability to replace your batteries. When I say a battery life of between 3 and 5 years, it really does depend on the environment. Batteries quite like environments that us humans like, so temperatures of between sort of 5 and 25 degrees is good for battery backups. You'll quite likely get 5 years use out of a battery like that. And they also like to be in an environment where they get plenty of change of air around them to keep them cool. They can be installed outside, but they're generally not waterproof and they would have to be put in an enclosure. Does the unit clearly display battery capacity? Again, this is a great one. If a customer has a power failure and they can look on the battery backup and see that they've got 90% left, they're going to be a lot more confident if it's just a complete unknown. It's a bit like a car without a fuel gauge. It makes you unbelievably nervous. One of the useful additions is to have the ability to remotely monitor the battery backup, so that information will be taken from the battery backup, uploaded, and then interpreted by someone else to make a decision as to whether or not it's an imminent issue or you've got some time on your hands. And does the unit produce simple error codes? These are both useful to the contractor to ensure that it's been installed correctly, and from a client's perspective, it allows easy diagnosis of issues, particularly over the phone. I've got a P1, okay, you've got a power failure, or what have you. And another useful addition is having a log within your system. So what is a log? A log is basically a number of lines of data that tells you exactly what's happening with your battery backup, how much power it's got, when it was charged up, when the mains power was turned off, how long the pumps run for, all these types of things. The great thing about logs is they can really help with diagnosing intermittent faults, so a fault that an engineer might not find when he's actually there, but the log potentially would give some sort of indication. And probably more important to you contractors in the business, it quite often can be proof of what has actually happened on site. Now, I've put here that sometimes our clients tell lies. We never turn the battery off, we were here all the time, we never lost the power, etc., etc., etc. That log is a complete list of events that are date stamped, and we have used them quite successfully to defend insurance claims. So I've got 2 seconds left, and I'm going to take 15 if that's okay. So just in summary, in light of BS 8102 2022, battery backup should be installed at all pump stations where there's uncontrollable water. So in other words, groundwater and surface water. I'd like to call them acts of God. If you don't believe in God, maybe the universe or whatever, but this is essentially water that we can't stop. The UK power grid is not the only consideration when coming to select battery backups. In fact, you're more likely to get issues from local circuitry in the property itself. So that's the final point. So obviously there's a number of options when it comes to battery backups. Customers need to look at the local applications, and I would always say involve your pump station specifier to select the correct product for you. Thank you.